Well, that's the trouble with it, is trying to decide what to call these words, man, or trying to decide what to call this whole thing.
You may have heard people talking about net neutrality lately. Unlike most things I talk about, this issue is simple. Here are the facts. An Internet Service Provider, or ISP, is the company that connects you to the Internet. If we think of the Internet as a road network, your ISP builds and maintains your driveway. That metaphor is not perfect. On roads, you can choose a destination after you leave the driveway. With the Internet, you pick your destination when you start, so your ISP knows where you're going. Net neutrality, or the open Internet, means that your ISP has to give you access to all websites on the same terms. That shouldn't sound strange, it's how the Internet has functioned all along. But of course, you use more data on some websites than others. This frustrates the ISPs. Verizon sued to allow this. In January 2014, a court voided net neutrality, but not because it was wrong in principle. Skipping the technical jargon, the point is that we don't need a constitutional amendment or even a new law to restore net neutrality, just a new rule from the Federal Communications Commission. But why bother? What's so bad about a fast lane? Well, first of all, fast lane makes it sound like the ISPs are offering to build new infrastructure. They're not. They're offering to sabotage existing infrastructure. Oh, and that's our infrastructure they'll be sabotaging. That is when we, as individuals and businesses, use more data, our ISPs charge us more. So if we want to watch movies all day, I pay for a faster connection and an unlimited plan. So if the ISP also charges the movie site, it's billing them for data that I've already paid for. In the end, I'll pay twice because the movie site will have to raise its rates. And we can't go to our ISP's competitor because most of the time, there is no meaningful competitor. The lack of competition is one reason Fastlane would count as slow in other countries. Our ISPs don't have to bother giving us good service. And if we let Comcast merge with Time Warner, there'll be even less competition. Still, so far, this might not sound like such a big deal. But without net neutrality, here's what can happen. Let's say your ISP is AT&T, and AT&T wants to create a Netflix-like service. They in fact already do. Instead of competing by providing better service at a lower price, AT&T could compete just by slowing Netflix down. Or let's say the CEO of Comcast decides that he likes CNN's take on current events better than Fox's. He could slow down Fox's website and speed up CNN's. Or if he thinks the Republicans are more likely to allow the Time Warner-Comcast merger than the Democrats are, he could slow access to the Democratic websites. And even small differences in speed matter. People use Google less if the results take even a fifth of a second longer. Heck, people started using Google in the first place because its stripped down front page loaded quickly. Point being, if you slow something down enough, you've effectively blocked it. So anyway, the FCC came out with a draft rule on May 15, 2014. The new rule allows ISPs to charge for a fast lane, but forbids the abuses that we just described. No legal content may be blocked. ISPs may not act in commercially unreasonable manner to harm the Internet, including favoring the traffic from an affiliated entity, from the FCC draft rule. FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler made the rule sound pretty good. If the network operator blocked access to lawful content, it would violate our non-blocking rule and be commercially unreasonable and therefore doubly prohibited. When content provided by a firm such as Netflix reaches the consumer's network provider, it should be commercially unreasonable to charge the content provider to use the bandwidth for which the consumer had already paid, and therefore would be prohibited. When a consumer buys specified capacity from a network provider, he or she is buying open capacity, not capacity the network can prioritize for its own profit purposes. Prioritization that deprives the consumer of what the consumer has paid for would be commercially unreasonable and therefore prohibited. So what's the problem? Well, first off, the rule barely makes sense. ISPs can give one website faster access, but they can't give others slower access. Obviously, these are the same thing. The power to charge for a fast lane is the power to impose a slow lane. So the new rule means, at best, endless arguments and lawsuits over whether ISPs are misusing the power to impose a slow lane, a power that there's no particular reason for them to have. And at best, new companies will be at a disadvantage compared to established companies that can afford to avoid the slow lane. Imagine if that had been the rule all along. And that's the best case. At worst, the restrictions would be forgotten, like how broadcasters were supposed to operate in the public interest in exchange for the free use of public airwaves. and ISPs will be able to choose what we do and don't see on the internet. A better and more permanent solution would be to redefine ISPs as Title II common carriers. That would mean treating them like utilities. Then neutrality would be given, like how phone companies provide the same service no matter how we're calling, and can't charge the recipient for a clean signal. The ISPs will sue to prevent that, but they'll sue to stop any rule the FCC comes up with. And if our courts, which are not exactly strangers to making indefensible decisions in the interest of big business, decide against that, we can always try the currently proposed rule, which uses a different legal reasoning. And here's the thing, right now the rule is only proposed. There's a window for the public to comment. It ends tomorrow. And public comments do have an effect. The rule has already been changed once from a more ISP-friendly version. In fact, the FCC is officially still open to the idea of redefining ISPs as common carriers. And remember, this wouldn't mean regulating the internet. The internet would remain vast, decentralized, and endlessly innovative. It would just mean that the people who connect you to the internet would have to make their profits by connecting you to the internet, not by holding your connection hostage. So, net neutrality is the way the internet has worked all along. We could reinstate it by defining ISPs as utilities. Not reinstating it would open a can of worms. There is literally zero reason not to reinstate it except that some big and powerful companies can make more profits without it. We have until tomorrow to make our voices heard.
You know, what are these words that I'm talking about? They're just words that we've sort of decided not to use all the time. That's about the only thing you can really say about them for sure. That they're just some words, not many either, just a few, that we've decided, well, we won't use them all the time. Sometimes, well, hell yeah.